Welcome to the Nobody Guide to Life, where we provide tips and tools for personal growth, personal development in your spiritual journey that you can use right now in your everyday life. I'm J.A. Plosker. You can always find out more at thenobodyguidetolife.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Each day, most of us sit down to 3 meals and some snacks. Sometimes it's 2 meals. Sometimes it's just snacks. It's often mindless. Sometimes the day gets busy, we forget food, or we eat something but forget its effect on us. Food is powerful, and it can either bring us power or deplete us. For my guest today, her relationship with food hasn't always been easy, but she believes the struggles she's had with it have given her a gift that she now wants to share with the world. Melanie Jatsek is a woman who for years had everyone fooled. She was young, thin, healthy, and studying to be a dietitian. No one knew that this quote-unquote perfect girl was silently suffering an internal battle with binge eating disorder. After she healed, she was able to look back and discover all of the things she was doing and thinking to fuel the fire of the eating disorder. Today, Melanie views her experience as her life's biggest gift. She's made it her mission to share with others the missing pieces to a world of inner harmony with their food, body, and health. She just published her 3rd book, Missing Piece, and we want to welcome her to the show. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Oh, thank you so much, Jay. It's really my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's just wonderful to have you on. Your journey is one of great depths and great heights, and you seem to have come out of it with a really strong message about something that's in all of our lives, food. It's as basic as water and air. And I guess I'd like to know a little bit about your journey. How did you get on your path of personal growth? What were those moments, those wake-up calls that pushed you along to where you are now?
Well, gosh, it was literally a journey. I used to call it a battle. And the more I look at it, as you said in my introduction, it really was a blessing for me. So I look at it more like a journey now. So really what happened was back in my college days, as you said, was studying to be a dietitian, and I was learning all about food and nutrition. And for those type A Virgos out there who may just take a little bit of information and, if we're perfectionists by nature, we take it a little too far. And that's what I did. So essentially what ended up happening was I took my knowledge of food and nutrition and it exploded. So I always tell people, when you put a restriction on a food or on calories or whatever it may be in terms really of anything in life, but we'll talk about food, that restriction really blossoms the need or the want or the desire for that very thing that you are restricting. And so that's what happened to me. And it just captivated me in not a good way. I mean, night and day, all I was doing was thinking about food. And then I would, binge on the very things I was restricting myself of, and most of this was sugar. It wasn't, the healthy stuff. It was, cupcakes and pizza and all the comfort foods that you could think of. As soon as that sun went down, I would secretly binge on all of these foods I wasn't allowing myself to have. And this literally went on for 3 years. And at the end of that journey, I kind of came out clean on the other side, and it really changed me in so many ways. It really paved the course for the rest of my life up until this point. And that was 20 some years ago.
So is that something that you had an issue with for your whole life? Do you remember before that time having a difficult relationship with food, having a difficult relationship with nutrition?
Absolutely
like that?
Not. And that was the strange thing. I mean, I knew what it was like to be at peace with food, and I didn't even call it that. You think of it as kids, you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full, donuts are just donuts and cupcakes are cupcakes, and, broccoli is broccoli. You didn't really, sure, you liked cupcakes better than broccoli, but it was really not a big deal. And I had no issues up until that point where I started really it was dieting that got me into that 3-year cycle of binging. So that's how I knew when I got sucked up into this, that this wasn't normal. And I was terrified for my life. I mean, I did not really know how this was going to end for me.
So when you were in it, were there emotions that you were struggling with? Because I think it's important, because when we hear about eating disorders, sometimes for those of us on the outside, it's a mystery as to what's going on the inside. We look in from the outside and think, how can this be? And were you struggling with difficult emotions that you think contributed to that? What was going on around that time?
You know what? It wasn't emotions. It really wasn't. It wasn't emotions. It was just the simple fact. And of course, hindsight, you always see this afterwards, and that's kind of what the book is about. But when I was going through it, I didn't realize that the very thing that was triggering these binges was the restriction and the deprivation mindset. And even though the foods that I was binging on, they weren't good for me, but had I just lifted that red X off of them, I would have been at peace, like I was as a child growing up all the way up to that point. So really, there was no emotions. I honestly, and it's kind of funny that you ask that question. I look at my life now, and now I can tell you, yeah, I eat emotionally because I'm human, right? We all do.
Right.
And if we say that we don't, we're lying. We all do. But I can pick up on it when I am eating emotionally. If I was eating emotionally, then I wasn't conscious of it, because this was so just, I was in this zone, and I would eat until I was numb. And it was all because I was not allowing myself to eat those very foods. And that's the diet mentality. Right. I see it happen time and time again. And it just breaks my heart when I see people go through this, because I know what's going to happen. It might not be binge eating disorder, but I know behind closed doors, it's not pretty for people.
What was the moment for you? Because that's such an integral part of your journey, of course. And so what was the moment where you made the shift? What happened in that moment where you realized there had to be a change?
Gosh, you know what? And this is so funny. I used to say to people and to myself, and because I didn't quite know the moment, I would used to say it was a conscious decision. I consciously decided to give up dieting. But you know what, Jay, that was not true. I guess really what I'm saying is I didn't really know how to answer that question. And I guess here's where the spiritual piece of this comes into play. I tried to rationalize it and say, well, of course I had to consciously decide that. But when I filter back through my life, I will tell you when it happened, when the moment for me happened, I was, my husband and I just got married. So here I am, this newly married woman who just graduated from college with full-blown binge eating disorder that nobody knows, right? We got married. We actually ended up getting married in Las Vegas. That's another story, but it was it was it was in a church and everything. It was, we weren't in the chapel, the Elvis chapel or anything, but we got married in a church, and the very last binge, and I didn't realize this at the time that it was going to be the last binge, but the very last binge that I participated in was when, you know how you have the top of your wedding cake that you're supposed to save for a year, you freeze it and you're supposed to, that whole ritual. Well, we had the top of our wedding cake, and there it was sitting in our hotel room, boxed up, ready to go. We were ready to, kind of leave for the airport. And my husband went down and had a quick little workout in the gym. And he says, I'll be right back in about an hour. So during that hour, I had my final mindless binge, on the top of that wedding cake, that was my binge. And, of course, I had to hide the evidence, and I told my husband, it's probably spoiled, blah, 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 so let's just leave it here. Well, now, long story short, little did I know then, we got on the plane, came back home, moved into our new condo, entered the doorway of our new condo, and it was as if, and I to this day, I can't explain it rationally, but it was as if when I started in my new life that it was decided that I learned everything I needed from that eating disorder. And I did not have one binge up until, that was in the year 2000, August of 2000. That was my last binge. And so here's how I look at it now. I'm wiser. I've connected more with, with my source, and I look at it as if that was the crack that needed to happen in me to allow a light in. And I believe that the crack was there, the eating disorder was there, the light shined through, and someone decided that was it. And I had learned everything I needed from it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how we want to word this, but I kept it to myself for many,
Right.
many years because I was so ashamed. So now I have the label of dietitian, who is recovered from an eating disorder, yet I was so ashamed of that. I didn't want anybody to know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't,
Right.
there's no way I could share this. What kind of credibility would I have,
Right.
Until, it was probably a good, I don't know, I want to say maybe 8 years ago or so that I finally shared it. And when I shared it, it was as if my world shifted, because finally people could relate to me on a level that I never even would have imagined.
Right. And that's so interesting because I love the image of just it's time being done, but you still had to show up and participate in what was next. And that kind of brings me to the book, Missing Piece. When you made that leap and decided to be out there as a dietitian who had gone through these issues with food, how did you then build the bridge to the book Missing Piece? Where did that come from? How did the book fit into all of this?
Well, once I came out there, once I was out and I shared the story with people, and I started blogging and I was speaking on the topic, and, and I was plugging along just, fine, and people were resonating with me and people felt comfortable, and I was getting some coaching clients from it. And there was this space inside of me that was unsettled. And I guess the only way I can describe it was this burning desire, the low flame burning desire in me that knew I had to do something more with this message. I didn't know what that was, but I knew that I had to take this book, this message, and put it in some sort of format. So along with this kind of how everything has been evolving in my life, you'll appreciate this story. I was having lunch with a couple friends of mine, and we were sitting down at a nice cafe, and we had just ordered lunch, and we're talking, and all of a sudden before my eyes flashed the words missing piece. Okay. So I saw it,
Wow.
missing piece, in my mind, and I looked at, kind of looked up and said, I don't really know what this means, but it really hit me. And so I jotted it down on a napkin, put it in my purse, and said, I don't know what this is. I said this to myself. I don't know what this is, but it's something. And so a couple weeks went by, and I was blogging and journaling. I'm really big on journaling, just in my own private journal every day. And so it hit me. I said, oh my gosh, that is my book. That's the title of my book. I don't even know what my book is really going to be about, but I know that's the title. And so I bought myself a beautiful leather-bound journal from Office Depot, and with the gold pages and everything, gold lined pages and everything, and a nice, beautiful pen. And I just longhand wrote out my entire book a little bit every day, poured it all out. And then from there, the book was born.
Wow. Talk to us a little bit about the spiritual dimension of the book before we really dive into the principles of it. You referred a few times to the spiritual points along the way. Was that something you had been open to, or did they kind of come hand in hand with the end of your struggle with food and the beginning of the spiritual path? Or was this something that you'd always had with you through your life, this spiritual dimension?
You know what? It wasn't. Of course, I was raised in a Catholic church, so that was always there, but that had nothing to do with really what this book was about to begin with. I fell into that realization as I was writing this book. There was simply no other explanation. And so I as I was going through and writing each of the missing pieces, as I'm writing them, I'm thinking, my gosh, there's a central theme here. And what is it the question that I had to answer throughout this entire book is, what is it that helps to keep me on track? And why,
Right.
how am I doing this? Because people will always say, yeah, but you've got strong willpower. And I said, you know what? It's really not that, but I just can't put my finger on it. So as I was writing this book, I fell into what that true central missing piece was. And so it's almost as if, JA, that I came into the realization that, holy cow, I am a piece of the divine. Okay. That
Right.
was something that I did not grow up believing. I believed that that was something outside of me, and
Right.
not me. And so I fell into this realization, and I've got to tell you, it just totally rocked my world. And I couldn't even put into words how that made me feel light. And even, I thought I had it all figured out, and then I was like, oh my God, so this is really what it is. And so
Right.
really what the central piece is in this book, which governs and really glues all the other pieces into place, is the idea and the concept and the truth that you need not seek any further for the piece that you believe is missing, because that piece is there. It's been there
Right.
all along. You've lost it, or you aren't connected to it. And so that's what this message and every single missing piece comes back to: the breathe into that, allow, seek no further, because we all know that, when we set out on a path for healthy eating, I don't care who you are, you're always looking outside of you for the next guru, the next exercise craze, the next
Right.
plan out there, the paleo, the keto, whatever it is. And you're looking for someone else to give you the answers, when I believe very strongly we all have the answers within us. We aren't connected or tapped into that.
Right. That's a very powerful message just in general. I mean, just for any metaphor of a journey, the idea that the destination is there, and, you have the shoes on your feet and you're walking, and all the tools you need are there. Sometimes you do need some advice. Sometimes you do need to stop and ask for directions. Sometimes you do need to consult the map. But really, it always comes down to you. And people always say to me, they were on this long spiritual journey and they felt like they couldn't go on. But then they found the strength deep within them. The strength they needed, the point of view they needed, was always there inside of them. And that's a really powerful message you bring. And I want to ask you then, you say the book has, I think it's 11 principles, right, to restore inner harmony with our food, bodies, and health. So this central core message you have, talk to us about those 11 spokes, those 11 principles. What are those? What does this book say to us about how we can bring ourselves back into balance?
So basically what it is, we all have these ways of looking and living, these outlooks that we can choose to recognize or not. And I believe that most people, they don't realize how much power they have just by simply shifting perception.
Right.
So,
Right.
And I say restoring inner harmony with food, body, and health, because the harmony is there. We just have to tap into it. So essentially what these are they're almost, I call them like little stones that I stumbled upon after I healed. So the mistake that most people think is that this is what helped you heal. And no,
Right.
it's not what helped me heal. It's what I stumbled upon after I healed, as I was writing the book, saying, these are some of the things what keeps me on track. It's because I choose to do these things, and I choose to have the outlook, this way. And everybody can do this, not just me. And it has nothing to do with willpower. So there's 10 spokes. The central one, the 11th missing piece, is the seek no further. But the 10 spokes, they have to do with not even necessarily what you're eating. It's not spoke number 1 is drink more water. Spoke number 2
Right.
is, get 10,000 steps a day. They are, to give you an example, one of my favorite, and the second missing piece is the idea that what you resist persists, right? So no
Right.
matter what that, if that's calories altogether, whether that's the chocolate cake sitting in the fridge, the more you put that, can't have, can't have, can't have, the more you're going to want it. And then along the rest of the spokes of the wheel, there is no food is forbidden. I am
Right.
a stickler on that one. And most people will say, well, how could you tell me that I'm going to be healthy and I need to be healthy and I need to make better choices, but you're telling me no food is forbidden? And this boils down to human nature. Okay. We are all human beings. And the one thing that happens when we tell ourselves we cannot have a food, or we put the red X on that food, even though that food may not be good for us, it might have too much sugar, it might have too much salt for our bodies. But what happens when you tell yourself you can't have something? You want it 100 times more, right? So
That's right.
why do we continue to do this to ourselves? And that is, I see it all the time. So I tell people it's not about, it's not about whether or not this food is good for you or not. You have to be able to open that door, that prison door, that food prison door that you locked. You have to be able to open that up and be free. And the only way you can do that is by literally lifting the red X's off of all of those foods. And it doesn't mean that I'm telling you to go to the grocery store and fill your cart up with all that stuff. But I am saying that now that you've lifted that red X, now you have a choice. Now you're free to
Right.
make the better choice, but you can't make the better or the healthier choice when you are stuck in this web of dysfunction with your food. So that is another kind of mindset piece. And then, as you go along the what I call the path to peace with all of the missing pieces, most people will say, okay, that's great, Melanie. I'm fine to say no food is forbidden, right? I mean, I'm willing to lift all those red X's off, yahoo. But what happens if, I really hate the taste of Brussels sprouts? What happens if I love junk food and I love cupcakes and I can't get enough of them? How am I supposed to get from here to really making a difference to where I'm fueling my body with the foods that it deserves, to be healthy and thrive? And that's where another one of my favorite missing pieces, and these are kind of all in order of how they're laid out in the book. One of my favorite missing pieces is the next one, which is called What You Feed Your Body Most, It Will Crave. And so most people don't realize that they've trained their body to crave the foods that it craves. It knows no
Right.
better, right? I mean, when I was going through binge eating disorder, all I craved was sugar. I mean, sugar in any form I could get it. Now I crave roasted Brussels sprouts.
Yes. Yes.
And the only reason that happened is because I started feeding my body those foods. It didn't happen overnight, of course, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. But when you start to practice these pieces, you really realize that, oh my God, I have so much more power. My body really wants to be well and healthy, and it responds by just giving you these great, incredible food cravings for foods that, like I said, help you thrive.
See, I love this. I like, I wrote a book called The Nobody Bible, and we kind of talk about the simple things that you can do, this ancient wisdom, but it's stuff you do right here, though. You have the power right now to make that connection to that ancient wisdom and change your life. And what I love about Missing Piece, what you're describing, is it empowers us by being very matter of fact, that we have the power right now as we open our fridge, right with the foods we have in our house, to change the way we look at food. Very simple, very plain. And I think that's a very empowering message. And I really resonate with any message that puts the power back in our hands, that gives us the power, that gives us the reminder that we have the wisdom to do the things we need to do to make a change. How do you get this message out? Do you have recipes in the book? Do you give people plans that they can follow to help them to nurture their bodies in certain ways?
So what I do is the big part, and I did this by design. The last thing I wanted to do was to give people another meal plan, right? Because that's what they come to me. I want a meal plan. I want a meal plan. And now, Jay, I really have spent a good portion of my professional career giving people meal plans only to find them kind of in the trash after 2 weeks. And so I realized I really was doing a disservice to my clients and to people I was confronted with, with the question of, give me a meal plan, tell me exactly what to eat. Because if they're not fixing the mindset piece, no meal plan in the world is ever going to work. I always go back to, you can look at some of the most famous celebrities who have all of the money in the world, and they've got the personal chef and they've got the personal trainer and they've got everything laid out. And yet still, not all of them, but a good handful that I have right in my mind, and I won't say any names, still that are still at odds with food. They're not at peace. So I know a meal plan to start for these people is not the answer. So in the book, what I do, I have one rule when it comes to eating, and that is, all I want you to do every meal that you eat is to include what I call earth foods, and I suggest at least 3 earth foods per meal to form what I call a peace meal. Corny, but it works, right? So what earth foods are, they are foods that come from the earth. Everybody knows this. Kindergartners know this, right? They're fruits, they're vegetables, they're herbs and spices and nuts and seeds, single ingredient foods that, that they're whole foods, right? And I give them lists in the book about it, but the key is not to, measure out your earth foods and you'll have 1 cup of this. It's just, I'm not telling you what not to do. I'm telling you what to add to your meals. And with the goal of gradually shifting your taste buds and your cravings to really want more of these foods. And then I lied. I did say only 1 rule. I have 2. I suggest then that people, as they read the book, prepare a piece. I have Piece of Health shakes, and these are shakes that are all made with whole foods, no kind of hokey ingredients that they have to go buy a certain shake powder and all of this and that. Everything is whole food ingredients that they could find either, at their grocery store or, Amazon has all these great, deals and things like that they can order and whip up these vegetable and fruit shakes that will get their bodies, at least if they do nothing else throughout the day, that is the one thing that will nourish their body in a way that they may never have been nourished before, without artificial ingredients. And as a result, these shakes are not sweet. They're not going to taste like a shamrock shake, right? They're not going to taste like a milkshake. They're going to be they're sweetened with a little bit of fruit. And so people who may not be at that stage with their taste buds, I tell them, add a little bit more fruit, add a tiny bit of honey to that. I'm not concerned about that. I just want you to get those nutrients in so your body can come alive with those ingredients and just really shift in a way that is quite profound.
I love it. And like I said before, I love any system or compilation of wisdom that puts the power right back in our hands right now. The very next smoothie you make, hang up this podcast, put your phone aside, and go make that smoothie. Right in that moment is a connection to health. Right there is the first step. That's the kind of stuff that I resonate with. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning is trying to get that message out. So on that point, what's a tip or tool then that you can give us right now that can help us on our journey of personal and spiritual growth, that can help us with our relationship to food? What's your one tip?
One tip, and this is another one of the missing pieces, is I want everybody to get a very, very strong image in their mind of that which they want to become. The body that they want to live in, the health that they want to experience. Pretty much everybody has that image in their mind, a realistic image of what you are looking and feeling like at your best. And the most powerful thing I can share is to, instead of looking at that image as something outside of you, pick your body up and step it into that image and become that person. It's what I call live with the end in mind. So no longer are you striving to be that person with healthy blood sugar and energy and feeling great every day. You already are that person. You just have to step into those shoes and make the decisions that person would make. And that might mean making a shake for breakfast or for lunch. It becomes easier once you already see it as done than striving and chasing after. That doesn't work.
Right. And that's a powerful way to build new brain connections, to build new habits of mind, and to build motivation, because you become accountable for yourself, because what you see is what you know you have to achieve at that point. And anything less just won't satisfy you. So I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Nobody Guide to Life. Thank you, Melanie, for being on the show. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh gosh, thank you, Jay. This really was a pleasure.
Well, I want to remind our listeners, food is the fuel we need every day. Along with water and air, it's the constant companion in our lives. What we put in our bodies has a profound effect on what we put into the world. So it's worth thinking about how we interact with and enjoy our food each day. Think of your meals and snacks as opportunities to practice discipline and mindfulness every single day. You can find out more about Melanie and her book, Missing Peace, Peace, at melaniejatsek.com or on Facebook at Melanie Jatsek. Those links will be in our show notes at thenobodyguidetolife.com. And you can always check out more episodes at thenobodyguidetolife.com. Reach out to us on Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View, or join the Facebook community, Simple Spirituality. If you liked what you heard on this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you know. Keep practicing and have a good week.